Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And let me start by congratulating Joanne Lamont on securing this debate. And unusually, not words I often say, also congratulating James Kelly, who I see from the report is the author of the foreword to the report. And a very excellent report it is too. And I think it does Parliament considerable credit that a cross-party group can produce such a substantial contribution to a very important part of our debate. And in her remarks, Joanne Lamont referred to the imbalance in the number of housing co-ops in Scotland compared to south of the border. I'm never afraid to pick up good ideas from wherever they come, including south of the border. And I turned immediately to Section 8 in the report to have a look at what it says there. In my brief contribution, I won't explore it in any great detail, but I think there is a considerable amount of things to say. The cooperative movement in housing is an important part of creating housing for people across Scotland. It can contribute a great deal to fill the gap that Scotland has suffered from, as the rest of the UK has, since the right to buy was introduced in 1980, resulting in 2.6 million houses across the UK being sold out of public housing stock. And the cooperative housing associations can play their substantial part in creating housing for people who otherwise are going to find it difficult outside the private sector, where it's very expensive often and not always of good quality, to have the kind of living space that's essential for people who want a good standard of life. Rent prices are going up. People are being encouraged to invest in buy-to-let properties, where the primary focus is for the landlord's interest in making a profit. When you have a cooperative, the people who live in the cooperative housing are the people who are at the centre of the decision-making. And I think that's right, proper, and unlocks potential for many people who otherwise, in too much of their lives, have little opportunity for their voice to influence important things in their life. So cooperatives in general and cooperatives in housing can make a particular difference to the quality of life of the people who live in them. And of course, it's a neighbourly way, a collaborative way of making decisions that can encourage social bonds and collective responsibility, and that strengthens society as a whole. And when collectively people in cooperative housing decide on what their priorities are for their area, the whole area has something that is an example right across communities. And I was particularly interested in the example that's been drawn on here, the Whitlaw-Burn Co-op, which extends far beyond simply the provision of housing. Joanne Lamont referred to the provision of power and frozen power bills that come from that, addressing the fuel poverty issue, which of course has been before us this week in Parliament. For young people in particular, there is a challenge. The number who are living in rented accommodation has risen compared to my generation and others who followed me. So it's important we get the appropriate balance between privately owned and social housing. And cooperatives can play a very important part in that strategy. Presiding Officer, I think it was the Communities Committee that Joanne Lamont and I were both on. She was the convener, I was a humble backbencher. I remember that time occasionally with fondness. Sometimes I remember the robust engagement that Joanne Lamont had with the issues before the committee, as she always does. And I congratulate her once again, Presiding Officer, in bringing this important topic to Parliament and giving us the opportunity to discuss. And I congratulate all the cooperatives and their members. Presiding Officer.